On this episode of the Girl Talk podcast.
And then I've chosen to spend a day praying about my grief and praying to God to help me through my grief and praying to God to be with me in those moments. And that was a good day.
Hello there. You're listening to the Girl Talk podcast brought to you by Fox Toyota of East Tennessee. My name is Carol.
I'm Kelly.
Hey, I'm Tricia.
And we're so glad that you're around the table today with us. Yes. Grab a cup of coffee because this one's going to be a heavy one, but one I think we need to address. Yep. So have you heard anybody say recently, I just want things to get back to normal?
Oh my gosh, yes.
I've said that.
Right. I know, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's something that has come out of all of our mouths. And I think in talking with my small group at church, just some friends, and just hearing this conversation, I think we have an unrealistic expectation of what normal was. Because there were a lot of things at the beginning of the pandemic that we made I don't know if y'all did, but I made all these goals like I'm going to live life differently.
Yes.
And I'm not going to have my schedule so full anymore.
That's
Look
right.
at all this free time, and I'm going to grow an herb garden, and I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
I'm going to read those books.
I'm going to do all those things. And then when things
Exercise.
started opening up, we were right back in the place that we were.
Sure.
You know,
Maybe worse.
Maybe worse, yeah. So I think today where we dive in and start with this is, how do you grieve the loss of normal? Because I think that is a very real struggle for especially women right now, because we have an expectation, I think, in our minds of what we think normal is. And then when we don't, we either, don't live up to that or exceed that. I think this is a crazy kind of grief journey. And I think it's something that we definitely need to talk about.
I think we also have expectations that we can control it. Those type A personalities especially that are like, I can control all my things. All the circumstances around me I can control, and that just ain't true.
But the truth of the matter is, before the pandemic ever started, we weren't in control.
It's true.
I mean, that was a pseudo control, if you will. We thought we had control of things, and then you have add in an international pandemic, which none of us have been through before. And I heard somebody say it
Nor
so
do we want to do
brilliantly.
it again.
No. I heard somebody say so brilliantly, when your kid tries to walk for the first time, don't go, why don't you just quit? You didn't do it right your first time. And yet this was our first pandemic. And so the struggle of learning how to live, learning how to school our children, learning how to do all those things, we didn't give ourselves much grace, and we expected to be really good at it. And
what I think we're experiencing right now? I heard this phrase today, and I think it's such a perfect one: change fatigue.
Ooh, yes.
There's so many changes, even day to day with, well, what does this business say, or what does this person say? And the health is changing, and the environment's changing, and this is changing. So much change, and we have zero margin left. I feel like for the past year and a half, 2 years, we've been trying so hard to kind of keep up with things that it's just, we're done. We're just exhausted. And when one thing goes that challenges us and disrupts our equilibrium, at least I feel like I fall apart because I have no margin left. I can't absorb anything else. I've got no bandwidth left. And
that bleeds into so many other things.
Oh, yeah.
That it's not just change with pandemic-related things, but anytime anything is uncertain or changes, then I know for me, that's when I start feeling that level of stress.
Yes.
so how do we get that margin back?
Huh.
I mean, I at least that's what I'm hearing,
Well, I think expectations are big here. Like,
Sure.
what are the expectations? And you mentioned it earlier. Like, what are the expectations of normal? What is normal? Maybe there is no normal. Maybe we just have to kind of let go of what we're hoping is going to come back, or what we're hoping is going to happen. And we're just going to have to embrace the moment and where we are now. And here's the thing. None of this is a surprise to God.
Right.
Reading the Bible, you see that he has already told us, be prepared. It's not going to be easy here, but I'm going to be with you. I'm going to take care of you. But I think my issue is when I start to expect things to get easy, when I start to expect I can now get back in the hammock. It's not going to be that way. And the more I try to get it back that way, the more disappointment I get.
Yeah. So I think we should, you something you were going to add?
Well, I was just going to say, too, I think part of it too is that we do keep changing. And at some point in time, we do have to get to a place where we say, this is what's right for me.
Right.
And I hate the phrase, hey, you do you, boo. But that's kind of the thing.
I never heard the boo on the end there, Kelly. That's
so
cool.
good coming out of Kelly's mouth. You do you, boo.
Hey, boo.
It's the 13-year-old running off.
There you go.
But we kind of have to get to a place where we say, this is what it's going to look like for me, and here's the rules I'm going to follow, and here's the rules I'm not, and here's how I'm going to change, and here's how I'm not going to change. And that's kind of hard too.
So here's what I want us to do, because all three of us have gone through a grief journey, very different of sorts, but grief. And so what if we lay our grief journey that we've experienced in life alongside the grief of our normal and try to come up with some strategies and plans to move forward? Because I'm going to ask both of you this question. What are some steps that you have taken in your grief journey of grieving somebody that is very special to you in your life? What are the steps that you took to move forward so that maybe we can, duplicate those steps in our lives now to kind of help us get some forward momentum? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
So I'll start with you, KB.
Yeah, sure. So my most profound grief I had is losing one of my best friends 5 years ago, actually this week, passed away from unexpectedly from undiagnosed leukemia. And we had done a lot of things together. So for me, the best healing I had was to continue to do those things in memory of her. So, for instance, her birthday was a couple of months after she passed away. To celebrate her birthday, a girlfriend and I got together, and we actually had a picture of her, and we took it was actually a life-size picture of her, around different places around our hometown, and did things in celebration of her with her picture. So we got a birthday cake, and we went and played board games, because that was something she really loved to do. We went to a card shop and a bookstore and did all these little things to remember her, things we would have done with her. And so for me, that really helped keep her alive, keep her memory alive, even though in many ways it was painful because she wasn't there. We could say, Kirsten would love this. Kirsten would have...
Could remember the good times.
Yes, you could remember it and keep all of those... happy memories alive, that connection alive. And that was so important for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, what about you, Tricia?
Well, I just going to say, I love the fact that you did that and you held on to the special days. I think that's important. It's what we're talking about right now. Lessons we've learned through grief, holding on to special days and making them special, allowing them to be special. And special doesn't always mean like celebration and joy. Sometimes special can mean I'm taking the day off and I'm going to stay at home all day because I need that time.
Right.
So being aware of those special days, I think is very important. Lessons I learned through the grieving process, and most of them were from having grieved the unexpected death of my mother, who died in a car accident. Give yourself grace. You have to give yourself grace, knowing that you're not going to be your best. Yeah. Can we say that? You're not going to be your best going through a grief process of any sort. And knowing that's the case and not holding yourself up to some standard that's unreachable is going to feel better. It's going to feel better. One thing I really learned is there's a difference between complaining and or soaking in bad feeling and praying. And I know the difference because I've done both of them. I chose to spend a day in anger, complaining, frustration, and it wasn't good. Day and a half. It wasn't good. And then I've chosen to spend a day praying about my grief and praying to God to help me through my grief and praying to God to be with me in those moments. And that was a good day. And there's a difference between those two approaches.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What is your day that you spent complaining? What did that look like? I mean, what?
So it was this past year. Carol, you may remember it because I shared it with you guys. You may too, Kelly. It was this past year. It was the anniversary of Mom's death. And so I remember this very clearly because my sister chose to get some friends together and play praise music. Okay. I chose to, I think I took the day off and I played tennis. And I had a miserable day because I I was mad all day. I was mad at people. I spent a little bit of time praying. I didn't spend a lot of time praying. I did, my Bible thing in the morning. And then I was just like, ugh, this is a terrible day. And I just sort of gave in to the frustrations. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I played tennis and I was like, God, I better win. Well, guess what? I lost. I was really mad afterwards. I was like, can't you just let me win on this terrible day?
Yeah.
But he was telling me these two things are not related. You need to come to me. You don't need to push me away.
Yeah.
Don't need to make demands. You need to come and be loved and be held. Instead of that. And so I know the difference because I lived it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's how I spent that day. I ate whatever I wanted and I just, So
So it's almost like your attitude.
Yeah.
That you came to it with a angry, mad attitude.
It was a choice to be miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Such an easy thing for us to do.
Oh, absolutely.
A common thing.
Absolutely. The thing that I learned in my grief journey was that it can hit you out of nowhere. Like, I'm still amazed a little bit at it because you can go along, think you're having a great day.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like something, like, I'll give you, for instance, my dad loved silver dollars. I don't know if I told y'all this or not, but my dad loved silver dollars. He would, like, if he got a silver dollar, he would hang on to it. Mm-hmm. So after he died, found all these silver dollars and $2 bills were his thing, right? And so I was driving through the drive-thru, and the person at the window gave me back my change, and I thought, that feels odd in my hand, but I didn't think anything about it. I did because you get pennies, but you don't get very much back. But I thought that felt odd, so I threw it into my change thing right there in my car. And we got home, and I had forgotten something in the car, and I went back out there, and that was the only change in the little cup, and there was a silver dollar in there. And I completely had a full-blown come apart right there over a silver dollar, Mm-hmm. And when I first was new to my grief journey, I kept trying to avoid those feelings for the sake of everyone else, because I didn't want everybody to feel uncomfortable and not know what to say, and to have to try to come up with a platitude or something positive to say, which only ended up making things worse most of the time. So I would try so hard to mask that emotion instead of feeling it fully. And really, even though it's a sad emotion, grieving what was, and the memory of my dad, which is so good. Because, we tell stories about him all the time here in the office.
He's so fun.
He was fun, and so, but not trying to push those feelings down. And I feel like right now, especially, our culture is like, okay, it's over with in quotes, air quotes. It's over with. So now we got to move on. But we haven't dealt with the emotions of fill in the blank of the past 2 years. A lot of people have lost family members. Not only the loss of normal, but we've lost time. Some of if you have a family member that's in a facility, you lost probably a year to 18 months of not being able to see them. There's all these things.
Experiences.
We weren't able to cultivate those friendships that we love so much. We're all stuck at home, So there are some of those things that I feel like we still need to grieve and not kind of squash. Squash, is that a word?
It can be.
Yeah. Squash and squish. I think it's
squishing and squashing all at the same time.
So I think we don't need to squash those emotions, but to truly feel them, because then you can move on. Like after I had my full-blown come apart over the silver dollar, I was like, okay, now I'm good and I can go on with my day. But I didn't feel compelled to push that down, and it come out in some other way. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And one of the biggest lessons I think that we can all take away is you can feel hard things.
And should feel hard things.
This was a revelation to me with my weight. I'm going to even say this, with my weight, because I used to eat for comfort.
I do that.
Because I didn't want to feel certain things. And it could have been different things. It might be rejection or anger or whatever, but I would eat. And then at some point I learned you can feel that. You don't have to numb that. And once I did that, a lot of health things kind of changed for me, because I wasn't doing things to stop those feelings that were going to come anyway. It's like trying to stop a wave on the ocean. You can't do it.
Yeah.
But you can try to do it. Yeah. But your efforts will be in vain. But when you realize that with God's help, This is with God's help.
Sure.
You can experience hard emotions and live through it.
Yeah.
That can change your life.
Man, that's good.
Yeah, and too, when you experience those and you recognize them and you identify them, then you can figure out healthy ways to deal with them going forward.
Yeah.
And that's so good, because when we try to suppress all of those feelings, that's when we start to make really poor choices about our health, about ways we deal with things. That's really good. I like that a lot.
Well, we can learn that through
Permission
this
to
grief
feel.
process,
Yeah.
right? You've got permission to feel.
Yeah.
You can do it with God's help.
And I think once if you go through the grief process, you kind of learn strategies and things that are triggers.
Yeah.
And there are things that you, of course, want to stay away from. But you also develop a framework for being able to deal with those things and being able to say, this is what it is, and I can still very much grieve it and feel it, but I'm not going to. In the beginning, for me, it was debilitating. Like, the grief was so much, I just couldn't even, it took everything I had just to get out of bed in the morning. That was all I could do. It was like, if I can just get out of bed today, I'm doing good. But now I know those things are waiting. But I have more strategies in my toolbox to kind of deal with those things. And I think that's kind of where we want to encourage you today, is that you don't have to stay stuck.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, too, is a reframing of your own thoughts, too. One of Kirsten's favorite bands, actually her all-time favorite band, was Need to Breathe. And so now every time I hear a Need to Breathe song, I'm flooded with great memories of her.
Yeah.
And the way I've started thinking about it is, instead of getting sad about it, because that could be easy to do.
Sure.
I try to go, this is God's way of saying, I see you, I hear you, I know what you need, and I love you.
Yeah.
And here's a little God wink.
Yeah,
And so I've tried to turn all those things, like that little silver dollar moment,
Yeah.
Into God winks to
Right.
say, God knows me intimately and
Right.
knows what's going to make a difference in my grief process. And it's so comforting,
Absolutely.
And you don't have to get there right away.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think there are days where getting out of bed is plenty.
Yep.
If you are
Yep.
new to an experience and just struggling. But then you will do that reframing, Kelly. That's so right.
Yeah.
And then you can take the triggers and you can make them reminders of God's goodness.
And I think having girlfriends to talk about it with is so huge, because you want to talk. I want to hear about your dad. I want to hear about your mom. I want to talk about Kirsten out loud and remember those things and share those stories. So having people in your life that want to and are eager to hear about your loved one that you've lost is so important.
And that is important in our journey too, with what we've been through, to talk about it. I think, if I come away with anything from this conversation, it's find you somebody that will let you talk. Because in your grief journey, not somebody who feels like they got to fix you or make everything better or tell you, aren't you glad they're in heaven? Aren't you glad we've been through a pandemic? Well, no, nobody's glad. No one's. I haven't run into one person that was like, "Man, hadn't this pandemic been great?"
High five, high five.
Like, I can't wait for the next one. Nobody says that, right?
Nobody.
So if
They better not around me.
I know, right? If you find somebody who will sit in it with you and just let you talk about what you have lost and not feel uncomfortable, that's the thing about it. We all want to make each other feel better, but sometimes the best thing you can do is just sit and listen. Just sit and let somebody share that with you. So to wind up, anybody else have anything they want to share? To wind up today, I was given a tremendous gift at Christmas time this past year of a book called Every Moment Holy. And don't let the title of the subtitle, it's Liturgies About Death, Grief, and Hope. If you know somebody who's grieving, get them this book, because it is so profound. And as we close today, I would like the opportunity to pray this written prayer over us as we go, because and it's a little bit long, but I hope you'll just bear with us because it's so powerful. Once again, the name of it is Every Moment Holy, Volume 2, Death, Grief, and Hope. And this has been a book that I have sat down with many times when I felt like, God, no one understands what I'm feeling in my heart, that this author has been able to put to words and prayer the very things that we're struggling with. So see if you find yourself in the words of this prayer. This is a liturgy for a time of widespread suffering. So listen to these words. Christ our King, Our world is overtaken by unexpected calamity and by a host of attending fears, worries, and insecurities. We witness suffering, confusion, and hardship multiplied around us, and we find ourselves swept up in these same anxieties and troubles, dismayed by so many uncertainties. Be merciful, O Christ, to those who suffer, to those who worry, to those who grieve, to those who are threatened or harmed in any way by this upheaval. Let your holy compassions be active throughout the world, even now, tending the afflicted, comforting the brokenhearted, and bringing hope to many who are hopeless. Father, may these days of disquiet become a catalyst for conviction and repentance, for the tendering of our affections, for the stirring of our sympathies, for the refining of our love. We are your people who are called by you, and we need not be troubled or alarmed. Indeed, O Lord, let us love now more fearlessly, remembering that you created in us and appointed us to live in these very places in the midst of these unsettled times. It is no surprise to you that we are here now, sharing in this turmoil along with the rest of our society. For you have called your children to live as salt and light among the nations, praying and laboring for the flourishing of the communities where we dwell, acting as agents of your forgiveness, salvation, healing, reconciliation, and hope in the very midst of an often troubled world. And in these holy vocations, you have not left us helpless. O Lord, because you have not left us at all. Your Spirit remains among us. That is our hope. Thank you so much for joining us today. I pray that you've been encouraged by this podcast. I want to thank our friends at Fox Toyota of East Tennessee for their support. And hey, get in touch if you have a comment or question or anything that we can do for you. girltalk@thelightfm.org. And we will see you next time we gather around these microphones for the Girl Talk podcast. God bless you.